Picked up again by McDavid, straight up the middle, McDavid in, scores! What a goal! Tony Subban scores!
Crosby scores! Sidney Crosby, the golden goal! He did it! The greatest goal scorer in National Hockey League history is Wayne Gretzky! And Hemsky's loose! Hemsky, he scores! Can you believe what we just saw?
In comes Tavares. Walks in, Reed scores! Tavares again! Canada's back in it! 3, 2, 1! Series over!
Welcome back to episode number 4 of the One Timers podcast with Cam and Jules. It's been about a week since we last talked, and in that time frame, the Philadelphia Flyers have blown another lead. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that last night against the Bruins, Jules?
Well, that was a tough one. I mean, the penalty at the end of the game, I don't know if whoever watched, Scott Watton, just a stupid play at the end of the game, 7 seconds left. Bruins end up winning in overtime. But the comeback, I mean, that's what the Bruins do. That's everybody knows that they find a way, and David Pasternak's fantastic. I think Patrice Bergeron is tied for third in the league in points right now. So, you can never sleep on that team. The Flyers making mistakes, but I think they're second in that division right now. So I don't know what you're really chirping or coming at them too hard for.
Yeah, like I was, we were talking earlier about this. The way they're playing right now, the record is not reflective of their play. I think they're a much better team than they're putting on the ice, but they're, like you said, they're finding ways to win games. So kudos to them.
Yeah, well, they're down their top center. You don't have Couturier in the lineup, and you're playing and you're finding a way to win, like you're saying. And I'm happy for them. And actually, speaking, a little transition here. Speaking of number one centers, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are leading the league in points. Connor McDavid has 24 points in 12 games, and Leon Draisaitl has 23 in 12. And yet the Oilers are still a middling 500 team. How do you piece this together? How do you put a team around? Because I get surprised every year. I look at it and say, I looked at them in the playoffs, and David had 2 points a game, and they lost the Blackhawks. And I'm like, how are you that bad around him? Like, how do you do that? He does that, and you're still losing. And then I'm seeing it again now, and I'm still surprised. I don't know why I'm surprised. Like, what's happening? What do you think?
Yeah, truthfully, I'm not too sure. I think when we did our playoff rankings, we both kept them out of the playoffs for an obvious reason. They can't play defense, and without those two guys, they're in the Ottawa conversation. They are with the Ottawa and Detroit. Not taking anything away from these two guys. These two guys are just gonna have a dogfight the rest of the year for the Hart Trophy in all likelihood. Are just absolute stars and dominant in every game they play, and are clearly have not lost a break over throughout quarantine and the short break since last year. But their team as a whole, losing Mike Smith was definitely difficult, and having Koskinen in there not making any saves really, but the rest of it, I mean, you look at that game against Ottawa where they win 8-5, but when they were coming back, Ottawa scores a couple of those goals late, and we were sitting here watching it, and it was like, is this gonna go the distance? Like, is Ottawa gonna come back? Because Koskinen can't stop a puck, and Ottawa for the majority of that game, other than when McDavid and Draisaitl were on the ice, looked like the better team in my personal opinion. So everything in Edmonton scares me right now. If I'm an Edmonton fan, pick another one of the 31 teams, because things aren't looking good if those two guys aren't on the ice.
Yeah, I actually got to get on you here for this. So Stuart Skinner was the starter of that game, not Mikko Koskinen in that 8-5 game. And he's a career 800 save percentage guy in the AHL. So whenever Ottawa was making their comeback, I was like, all they need is a couple shots on net, and that might go. I was actually hoping they'd score, so McDavid and Draisaitl will have more incentive to try and keep going for some more points and try and break some kind of a record. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. Like, without those two guys in the ice, they're an AHL team. Like you have McDavid is literally on pace for 112 points in a 56 game season. He would win the Art Ross in a regular season with 82 games with 112 points. He could probably win it with that. And right now he's on pace for that in 56 games, and they're still a 500 team. So I don't know what the solution is other than just fixing the whole dynamic of the team. Like their decor is just not strong. Yeah, it's a tough look there. I have no other further comments. They have bad goaltending, they have bad defensemen, they have a couple wingers that can play, and 2 centermen that are fantastic, and that's an NHL team.
And that's just about all it is. If we're gonna look within that division, though, a team that on the polar opposites right now, any come to mind?
The Canadiens de Montreal.
It has been fantastic watching these guys play right now, and I'm gonna keep hitting them. As everyone knows, I'm a big Habs fan, but I'm staying reserved. We're not like I said, we're not getting ahead of ourselves here. But oh my God, they're just exciting. They're scoring on command, thanks to one guy by the name of Tyler Toffoli, who is just like looking fantastic. What are your thoughts as a non-Habs fan on that situation right now?
So I kind of gave it to you at the end of last episode. I said pump the brakes on the Canadiens, and still to a certain extent I stand by that. I think they're playing fantastic. I think they're for sure a top 2 team in that division. It's them and Toronto, and then everybody else. It falls off a cliff after that right now, the way it's looking. I do think they've played much better than Toronto. My big thing with them is that, like I said last time, they have Vancouver's number. And Vancouver's right now is competing for a playoff spot, and they're a fine team, but they've played Vancouver 5 times. Toffoli has, I think, 8 of his 9 goals against Vancouver. So without playing every team in the division, it's really hard for me to get a read on how strong of a team it is, if that makes sense. Because like Vancouver had a rough start, but did they have a rough start because they were playing Montreal and Montreal's great? Or is Montreal having a great start because they're playing Vancouver and Elias Pettersson can't get anything towards the net? So it's a bit of that give and take there. I think they are playing great. I think the true test is going to be when they're playing Toronto, because Toronto has Freddie Anderson, I think, has a below 900 save percentage, and they're still at the same win rate as Montreal. So that intrigues me. If he starts playing better, what can they do? I think they're a fantastic team, and I think all the praise they're getting is warranted. They're looking great. Everybody in their lineup, but guys like Jonathan Drouin are stepping up. He's being underrated right now just because of what Toffoli is doing and what Josh Anderson's doing. And if you want to talk Nick Suzuki, I could talk about that guy all day. He is fantastic. When I'm watching that, I know the other guys are getting all the praise right now, but Suzuki is the best forward, maybe the best player on that team, in my opinion. I don't know. What are your thoughts on him? What are your thoughts on them? But
Definitely no negative thoughts on him. He's been fantastic, and he's kind of what everyone wanted to happen and didn't really even expect to happen, I'd say, coming into this year. After the bubble last year, all the talk was KK and Suzuki can have a big step in the right direction, but they didn't know what the step was going to be. He's there already. There's still a lot of room to grow, but he's already a solidified stud in the NHL, and he's been playing well. Like you said, all those other guys like Drouin stepping up, he has lots of points. I don't know if he's at 10 yet, 9 or 10 now.
so, yeah,
Yeah, like you said, Toffoli, Anderson has 6 goals now. So you're looking at, I mean, the back end looks good. So all around it, just in my opinion, you can't be disappointed. It's even if it doesn't last, but I don't see how it doesn't last. The Vancouver matchup is perfect for us. That's one thing, is they're just as bad as Edmonton defensively, right? And then I don't know if it's a right now thing or it's going to continue, but they've been struggling a lot, and the Habs have had the hot handoff offensively. So we'll see. Time will tell. The Habs we're recording this on Thursday right now. The Habs actually have the Ottawa Senators tonight, so you're talking about having to play the other teams in the league. We'll have a tough time with Ottawa, I'm sure, as of tonight.
Well, like when you're looking at the Sens right now, that's 2 points you can't drop. Like it used to be like, okay, maybe we were talking at the start of the year and we're talking about how bad we thought Detroit was. And we're like, well, Detroit's going to steal some games right now from teams. But if you're any team in the Canadian division, how tight that's going to be, you can't lose to Ottawa. Like you cannot afford to lose a game there. They won the first game of the year and they've lost every single game since. But back to when you're saying everybody's happy in Montreal, I know one guy that's not happy in Montreal, Victor Mete. I don't know what the story was there. He requested a trade, or his agent Darren Ferris came out and requested a trade, and then Bergevin was like, yeah, no, he didn't. And then it was like, no, he requested a trade. Now Bergevin's like, hey, well, we're not trading him. And then all of a sudden he goes from being a healthy scratch to in the lineup. So whatever he did, asking for a trade, it worked. He got in the lineup. But do you think that they're going to end up dealing him, or do you think he's going to stick around?
So as much as I've looked into it, Bergevin is a very, very difficult guy to follow with trades and moves. He pretty much whatever you expect to happen normally doesn't end up going that way. And he doesn't normally openly talk about things that he's going to do. So if I was the GM of the Montreal Canadiens, I think where we are right now, where he has some I think he'd have a decently high trade value, be able to get a piece for him. I'd move him because I don't think right now, especially with our D-core coming up, as we've talked about in the past with guys Romanov is how we have to pronounce his name now, but he's on the team now. We have some Harris and Struble at Northeastern. So there's lots of young guys coming up where I don't know if he's ever going to find a role within the team. So if he's unhappy and I don't know if he's benefiting you at all, maybe you can move him. That's what I'd probably rather that.
Yeah, so I think I agree with you to a certain extent. I think, like you said, he lost his job when Romanov, I gotta say that now, when he joined the team this year. Like he pushed him out. Like everybody was like, oh, he's highly touted, but he might still have some growing pains adjusting. He jumped right in, fit like a glove. He's fantastic, right? So Mete comes out of the lineup. But for me, I think you could get a good draft pick for Victor Mete. I think that you could trade him and things could go well and you could get a good draft. And I think that's selling on an asset at the right time. I also think everything's rolling so well for your team. And their biggest thing is their depth on forward, depth in defense, depth on D. They don't have the crazy superstars in any capacity to a certain extent. They've got some guys, like you said, we were stepping up. But, you have a couple injuries on D. You don't want to be throwing AHL guys in there or guys that aren't really ready, or you're having to call guys up from junior, like you're calling your guys at, I don't know, school and say like, oh, when does your year end? Or are you coming to sign with us? Right. Like you'd rather have a guy that can play in the NHL. He's played in the NHL for years now. He can do it. Kulak gets hurt, Jeff Petrie gets hurt. You need somebody that can jump in, and Victor Mete can do that. So with the way the team's rolling, and if they're truly going for it this year, I don't really see the point of selling it on an asset. I don't see it's definitely what the player wants, because he doesn't want to sit on the taxi squad. He doesn't want to watch. Like I wouldn't want to either. It'd be terrible. But if I'm Bergevin, I'm just kind of like, yeah, we'll deal with him in the offseason. It's a short year. You can hang out. We're trying to win a cup. If we win and you get in playoff games, it's going to be better for you. So I'll just hang on to him and see where it goes. I mean, speaking of trade block stuff, what do you think of Sam Bennett? What's going on there?
Well, let me dive into the Mete thing right first. You want to talk about available? We trade Mete. One guy on the block. We're gonna get to him later in a little bit, but let's trade for Tony DeAngelo.
I don't think the Habs can sustain Tony DeAngelo, and you want to talk about a team that everything's going right. So let's trade for the quote unquote biggest cancer in hockey. Let's see what happens.
That was a joke. That guy. Well, I think we're gonna get to that guy. That guy. He's gonna get some hate from the podcast pretty soon. But on Sam Bennett. Sam Bennett's a guy. Actually, we talked about him this summer a decent amount, and I always liked the guy. And it sucks. I mean, guy can't. I'm sure he can do a pull up now. Couldn't do a pull up. But third overall pick, right? And never panned out as a third overall pick, but he's had a good career as like a depth forward, as a good, tough hitting, checking forward with the Flames. So now he wants out because he wants more of an offensive role. So he's said he wants to try to like not be just solidified as that third line or fourth line guy for the rest of his career. So from that side of things, if he thinks he can make the jump, I respect him for trying it. I think Calgary is a great situation right now. So I might be a little more towards staying and trying to play it out there and seeing if you can't make a run. But for a guy that you come in as a third overall pick, and if you think that now's your chance to maybe do something with your career and like productivity wise, and you don't think you have it where you are, maybe you got to take the chance. So that's my thought on it. How about you?
My thing on him is that I see flashes of the skill, right? Like you said, he's a good depth forward. He plays the game hard. He plays the game the right way. He battles. And every now and then I'll see him get the puck and I'm like, okay, that's the high-end draft pick he was. Like he makes a play that I'm like, okay, he's got some skill. He can score. And I do think he's a guy who's ripe for an expansion team. Like if I'm Seattle, I'd be licking my lips at a guy like that because you could probably take him and he could play a top 2 line role and you never know what he could do. He could develop into that guy and it could be a steal for you, right? He's a guy that would love to go to an expansion team. As far as for a trade right now, it's weird to me because I am saying I see all the skill there. I don't think that the top end forwards in Calgary, I think they're a good deep team and have a lot of depth, but I don't think any of their guys are like outstanding generally, other than like Matthew Tkachuk and, you have the top line, Gaudreau and stuff. But I feel like if he played good enough, he should have been able to work himself into the top 6 there. I don't think they're that stellar of a top 6 or at least a top 9 where he could get some scoring touches in. So I think looking at that, there's some question marks around him. But at the same time, like I think that if another team, like if he ended up with a team that is missing a guy or missing a piece and he got to fill in there, and I'd like to see him get a chance. He's one of those guys, like you said, I think he came in his first year just in the playoffs and he did well from my understanding. He came in there. And then from there on, there was an expectation that he was going to be what he was drafted at. And then he just never hit that again. Right. So it's tough in his confidence and you fall into a role, but I still think he could be a scorer at some point. Yeah, that's really my thought on it. But do you want to go to DeAngelo now?
I mean, yeah. I'd like to speak my my opinion on this guy. We started this podcast 4 weeks ago, and the initial drop, right? The first draw or this is still praise. We still talked highly when I picked the Rangers to make the playoffs. It was more or less around him and Fox, right? Fox has been fine. Then we went through DeAngelo being a healthy scratch. And then I don't know if you heard, I'm sure you did hear the reason why they finally released him, but in that overtime loss to Pittsburgh, so he gets tied up behind the net or something happened that he wasn't happy with. And it was Shesterkin or Georgiev in the net?
Georgiev,
yeah. So as they're leaving the ice, he says something to him. Georgiev punches him in the face in the hallway, and they start going at it. Had teammates ended up ripping them off. And after that, right? So if you have 2 teammates fighting, normally you got to figure out who's in the wrong, right? Especially after a game like that. As soon as it happened, they were just like, "You're never going to play for us again. You're done." So that for this guy, it's an absolute embarrassment. And then for now, him just to clear waivers. No one really wants him. There's lots of rumors about potential trade deals and lots of interest from things I've seen, but who wants a guy like that? Like, sometimes I don't care how much you can do on the ice. Go play in Russia for a couple of years, try to mature and come back. I'm not giving you a chance. Like, cause it's been a thing since he's entered the league. And if you're at a point where they're saying like you're potentially the number 2 guy on their team and you're playing good, and they're just like, we want nothing to do with you. You can just go home until we trade you. So there's something wrong there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with anything you said. Once again, we're too much in sync right now. The big thing with him is that he had issues going back to junior. He had abusing official stuff. He had got in trouble with his team in junior. And there's a bunch of stories going on about him right now. It's hard to speculate which ones are true and stuff because they had that Keandre Miller story about him taking the puck. That was proven. They talked to the trainer and that was false. But all you can tell is that nobody's standing up for him. He doesn't seem like a good teammate, good guy. And when one other teammate incites it and punches him in the face and immediately he gets blamed and he gets waived, that kind of shows, they're not going to have his back. He's not the best guy. You don't want him on the team. I thought it was pretty funny. He was ranked to be a top 5 talent in his draft year, and he slipped, I think, to number 17. And Steve Yzerman took him with a Tampa Bay Lightning pick. And they asked Steve Yzerman about it. And Steve Yzerman said, well, we know he's got some growing up to do and maturing to do. And Steve Yzerman said, like, I had a lot of growing up to do when I was drafted too. And if he grows up, he's going to be a great player. I think every word that Steve Yzerman said was right. If he grew up, he'd be a great player. But it seems he still really hasn't. And he has some maturing to do. I thought it was interesting, though. The 4 teams that I saw were reportedly interested in him were the Calgary Flames, the Detroit Red Wings, the LA Kings, and the Anaheim Ducks. And we talked about Calgary. I thought that was interesting. But for me, the other 3 teams are all in a rebuild. So you have Detroit, LA, and Anaheim. And you're like sitting there like, maybe we want a good young defenseman coming in because really, look at Detroit. They can't get much worse. So they'd love to have him. And like we said, Yzerman was the one who drafted him. But at the same time, do I want a guy like that coming in and influencing my younger players? Like, do I want him around Zadina or Moritz Seider when I'm bringing him into the league? Do I want him next to Alex Turcotte and Quentin Byfield when I'm bringing them up to the NHL? Do I want that's how they get introduced to a guy who's been known to be a terrible teammate? I don't think so. So I'm not sure what those teams are thinking. I know why he cleared waivers if there's interest, because just money and all that stuff, you can't take on a $4.8 million contract. But like I said, if I'm a GM, I'm letting him be. I'm not even going near that. Wait till the $4.8 million contract ends. And then I say, hey, $700K, no pressure. I'll bring you in. If you play great, we could extend you. If we like you, we can extend you. But he's kind of back to the whole prove me stage now. And that's not prove me on the ice. It's just prove me off the ice that you can be an individual and you can be a hockey player and you can act like a professional. That's all you need him to do. And if he can just shut his mouth and play hockey for, a year or 2 years, he'll be fine. But
prove me character wise. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's different, but it's comparable to to an Antonio Brown situation. And his wasn't with teammates. It was more off field antics, but you're having a guy, obviously Brown was more of a star in the league, but you're having a guy that is near the top caliber or potentially to be at the top, definitely an impactful person, end up potentially being out of the league for a while, and teams very afraid to take a shot at him. So it's always interesting when this kind of stuff happens, just because, you're a professional athlete. At the end of the day, what do you care about more? Like, do you want to just learn how to get along and be a professional athlete and make a living, or maybe it's not for you? So I think the next few months or I don't know how long is left on his contract, but I think it's really make or break for him, because he's on his second or third chance now, and that's already a little bit too much for me probably. So
yeah, do you want to go to KHL and make decent money but have to live in Russia, or you can stay in North America and make fantastic money and all you got to do is just be a nice guy? It's really an easy decision. It should be. Yeah, we'll go to the next segment we have planned. I want to talk about the best teams in the NHL. So we already talked about the North Division a bit. I want to talk about some other teams because points percentage wise, I know they played the least amount of games. The Florida Panthers are on top of the NHL right now.
Yeah, and we were just trying to figure out before you were talking about who they played, and I can't name the teams off exactly. You can do that, but that whole division right now is it's interesting for me, and the Panthers especially. It's for them because you might forget like they had to play Dallas at the start of the season when Dallas went through COVID. So every other team was playing, they waited what was it 7 days to start the season, 5,
Yeah.
6 days. So they were behind as well. They didn't have COVID issues. So we talked about this then, how the Dallas Stars thing would impact other teams. They were the team that we thought would be negatively affected by it. And now have been dominant so far. But you look at that division as a whole, you have the Lightning with one regulation loss, the Hurricanes with one regulation loss, the Stars with one regulation loss, and then the Florida with none. And then it drops off to 4, 4, 5. So a lot can change, but those top 4 teams have just solidified that it might turn into if the one of the bottom 4 are going to get up, they've got to beat those teams often, because I don't think those top 4 are losing to the bottom 4, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, 100%. I think that it's crazy how bad my pick of Columbus to make in the playoffs is looking already with the way Florida's playing. But like we said, Florida hasn't played many games. You don't know what's going on. I think the funny thing about that COVID thing you mentioned, especially with them at Dallas at the start of the season, is that so Florida essentially got an extra week of training camp because they didn't have COVID issues and they sat around and they were just playing. So it might have helped them off the start, but that means those games are going to need to be played somewhere else in the schedule. They have to find a way to put them in. And that's going to make down the road less rest and make it a tougher week or a tougher month somewhere later on. So I'm kind of curious to see how it may have helped their start, but does it hurt them later on when they have to fit those games in? I think that's the crazy thing about the schedule that's going on in the NHL right now. Like Buffalo's having to sit out because they played the Devils. The Devils have 14 guys in the list. That might not affect them terribly right now. They might be fine. But, in 2 months' time when the NHL is trying to get in all those games and, maybe they play 4 or 5 nights in 1 week to try and make these games up, like how many of those games do you expect them to win? Right? Like, are they going to drop those because of that? And at a certain point, how much is the NHL going to force these guys to play? Or are they going to say, hey, you guys are going to finish with 52 games. Let's do it on points percentage. So I'm kind of curious to see how that all plays out. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I mean, if last year was one example of, I hope they don't do that. The Habs ended up getting in because of that, but it's very difficult to I know these are hard times, but it's difficult to say that you can't even play if it was 4-4 or 5-5 instead of doing if you had to at the end of the year, instead of doing like a points percentage thing. Because when we look at divisions, think about if let's look if it was a team that had in that division had to play Detroit, right? And you still are missing 3 Detroit games, and then they did points percentage. That's 6 points you're probably going to get, but your points percentage aren't going to add up to all 6. So where it's all divisional matchups and a lot of teams, you can beat the other team. Like I said, those weaker teams, I'd really, really like to see them try to get all the games in. I think they will. It's a hectic season anyway, so I think it'll just make it a little more interesting. But yeah, that's about all. That's about all I got on that.
Yeah. I mean, one thing also on the schedule I saw yesterday, you could correct me if I'm wrong on this, but since the North Division has a lower number of teams than the rest of the division, some teams get to be played more than other teams in that division just to make the numbers of work. So Montreal and Toronto each get an extra game against Ottawa that the other teams in the West don't. Now, we could say advantage, disadvantage. We understand why it is because Battle of Ontario and then Montreal is the other closest team. But that's I mean, if 2 points can make or break a season, if I'm Edmonton, I wish I got to play Ottawa in extra time rather than having to play Edmonton.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the only good thing is both of those two teams should be in the playoffs with Montreal and Toronto. So it might come down to seeding between another team, but that, like, in a perfect world, that doesn't happen, and it does suck for those other teams. Personally, I'd rather drop the Ottawa games and play Vancouver a couple more times, but it's just it has to happen, because imagine the complaints if they were playing a 60 game season or a 58 game season instead, right? Or if they were playing a 54 game season, you'd be complaining about rest. So it needs to be equal across the board. We have 31 teams in the league now. You have to make sacrifices. So
Yeah. So I have an interesting thing to bring up here. I got the notepad out. We had discussed before the podcast that we are 1 year away from the 2022 Olympics. We saw on TSN that Craig Button had put out a list of his projections for Team Canada for next year. So we thought over the course of the month, we would do rosters for each team's projections, but also not just that, our own picks. Because there's some guys I might think might be on the team that I personally wouldn't choose, or vice versa, and anything. So we chose our lists for the 2022 Canada roster, and then next week we'll move on to another team, and we'll try and hit the big 4 or 5. We'll try and hit, Canada, USA, Russia, Sweden, Finland over the next few weeks. So I don't know who should go first here. I got my Team Canada all set and ready to go if you want.
yeah, we're both done on that note. I think we can do well. How about you start off with the goalies, and then we'll just go. We'll go pick by pick, like D pair by D pair, and then line by line. I think a lot of them will be the same, so we can just wash those ones.
Yeah. So do you want me to go all 3 goalies or one at a time?
No, you can take the 3.
All right. So my 3 goalies are Carey Price as my starter, Carter Hart as my backup, and Darcy Kemper as my third goalie.
Yeah. I mean, first 2 are obvious. Got them both. I'm gonna go with Bennington on this one. It's more hopeful for me, I think. You could throw a few different guys in there. A lot of people aren't happy with the way he's played since the cup run. I kind of like the guy. I think I hope he finds his game back again, and if he does, then we definitely be taking him. So more of an optimistic approach.
Yeah, so I originally had Bennington down, and then I thought about it, and the only reason I went against him and I went for Kemper is that I find Kemper steady. You know what you're getting from Kemper. He's going to be good. He does have games where he takes it over, but if I'm picking a third goalie, I don't want to have to use this guy unless things go wrong. And I don't want Bennington that's either going to steal the show or he's going to lose the tournament for me. If I'm getting to my third guy, I'm just going to pick somebody dependable at that point. So that's why I went with him. How about you give me your top D pairing?
Shea Theodore and Cale Makar.
Shea Theodore and Cale Makar.
Yeah,
I have no disagreement. I think Cale Makar is my number 1 defenseman on this team personally. Him and Shea Theodore, that's scary. That's a scary puck moving offensive D pairing. It's amazing.
Yeah. So I got Shabbat and Petro next.
Okay. That's a great D pairing again. You got 2 guys who are bigger, mobile. I have Josh Morrissey as my left side and Alex Pietrangelo as my right. So I like Morrissey there. I think he brings a 2-way game. He hits a bit. He plays the right way. That's the same way I see Petro at a certain extent. So I like them together as a D pairing. My third pairing is where I have Thomas Chabot. So I have Thomas Chabot and Dougie Hamilton. I have a little asterisk on Hamilton because I can put Shea Weber in there because Shea Weber's my extra. But if Hamilton's not working, Shea Weber can come in and help shut down. But I like Hamilton's puck moving. I like his scoring prowess, and I like him with Chabot. I think they can both skate. I like them as a pairing. What about you?
Yeah, so I think we're just gonna switch one guy out for each one now. I get Hamilton with Weber on this one. You just hit the nail on the head there with Hamilton. And then my final pair is where Morrissey goes. And it's hard to really piece where guys are going to go. I think that top 6 is safe. Morrissey, I really want to put him in the lineup. I did, but it doesn't fit. And then the 8th D I have here is Ryan Ellis. So this is a really hopeful one for me. I love him, and I think So might have some hate for this one, I guess, but you can't really hate Ryan Ellis, right? He's done great for Canada in the past, and I think not that he deserves to be on the Olympic team through that, but talk about steady defenseman, a guy that if anything were to go wrong, he's there. He's not overly young now, right? He's a 2009 pick, 30. He'll be 32 in this maybe. So I think, another good year. He's been a career high 30s in the points. So I don't know. I just think I'd love to see a guy, like a good character guy, get in there. And at the end of the day, the 8th defenseman's not going to make or break the team. You could put Jay Bouwmeester there if you want. The team's probably still going to win. So I'm going to put Ellis in there.
Yeah. So I honestly, I do like that pick. He's had some success with Team Canada in the past. Like you said, he's steady. Like it was like my 3rd goalie pick. I want somebody steady as a number 8. I actually went with Drew Doughty. I know I might get a lot of hate on that, especially, not picking Morgan Riley on my team and having Doughty there. But I think Doughty's in the product of he's a lone defenseman on a bad team right now. Like he's not on the greatest roster, and they don't have a lot of good D there. I still think the guy can play. When I watch him, he does get burned out wide sometimes. His legs, he doesn't move as fast as I want him to, but I think that he's been there a few times. I think that he's still good. I think he can play both ends of the ice. I think he plays a bit hard-nosed. So if you need some more grit in the lineup, I think adding Doughty doesn't hurt. I feel like to all the Leaf fans, I have to give a reason of why I left Morgan Riley off, because I know I'm going to get flamed for it. So my reason for leaving Morgan Riley off is that he's basically a strictly offensive defenseman. I don't really think he's great defensively, particularly. And for on the roster that we're putting together, I felt like I had guys that produce offensively and move the puck that are better than him on it. So like, I think that Shea Theodore and Thomas Chabot and Cale Makar, I think they're better at being that offensive role as a defenseman. So I'm not going to have Morgan Riley as a defensive defenseman on this team. So that's why I would rather have Josh Morrissey in there, because I think he's better at both ends of the ice. So there's my little defense of myself.
Well, that can be an apology for both of us. Yeah, Morgan Riley, there's a great likelihood that he makes this team, right? Very, very high likelihood. But like you said, offensively, he's not beating out those top 3 guys, in my opinion. And he might be able to, right? If you're looking at points wise, he definitely does. But let's not be gentle here. He's a scrub defensively, right? He's been playing. How many years has he been in Toronto? 7 years, maybe, right? It probably still doesn't know Freddie's name. So he's on a team like this. I don't think he hurts you to say, but he's not really going to help you. And you don't need a completely defensive liable guy. So we talked about him in the past. I hope he changes for the better. But they're just better defensemen right now in my mind.
Yeah. So moving on to forwards, I'm going back. My number 1 and number 2 lines are quite interchangeable, but I have Jonathan Huberdeau, Connor McDavid, and Nathan McKinnon as my top line.
Next.
So my second line is going back to 2016, Brad Marchand, Sidney Crosby, and Patrice Bergeron. And Bergeron might be bringing that line back together might be a little odd. But for me, if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have been like, Bergeron's older. Maybe he doesn't log the minutes and stays on that line. And then I realized that I think he's 3rd in the NHL in scoring right now. So you know what? I'm fine with having Bergeron on my second line right wing.
Yeah. And I mean, my line's the exact same. That's why I said next for the first one as well. We have the same top 6. it feels, I don't know if this year's just been crazy, but this would be next year, like you said. So when we're planning ahead like this, when I'm thinking about guys and I'm like, oh, well, where's he going to be at that time? Like how old's he going to be? Blah, blah, blah. It's next year, right? Bergeron can still play. He's still very effective. The other two guys, it goes without saying. So yeah, I don't think there really needs to be an explanation on it. I think it's a solid pick, and yeah, I definitely agree with you. A lot of people would.
So my third line, I have Steven Stamkos playing the left wing on his offside. I know he does play left wing a lot. Matt Barzal at center, and Mitch Marner on my right wing. So I've got two guys that are known for their playmaking prowess with Barzal and Marner, and a sniper in Stamkos. What do you think?
I like it a lot. Honestly, kind of making me consider tweaking mine, but it's in stone now. I can't do that. I like it, and it's very, very. I couldn't imagine being the coach of this team. It's very difficult trying to pinpoint who's going where. But I think that could definitely work. Mine's similar. No, actually not similar. We just got Stamkos on there though. So I've got Steven Stamkos playing the right side with Braden Point and Ryan O'Reilly. So I mean, it comes down to it. I think the top two for me, as I said, are kind of, you could maybe interchange and tweak those parts. And then the bottom six could also, right? You could interchange Point and Barzal and different guys, but for where it stands right now, you have a little bit more age playing with Point. I like Point and Stammer playing together. I hope they start playing together in Tampa soon with Cooch being out. So I like putting teammates together on national teams sometimes.
Yeah, so that was a huge debate for me because I had those two, but I Braden Point is on my next line. So he's my fourth line center with Ryan O'Reilly on the left wing and Mark Stone on the right. So that's my shutdown line. Those guys are all two-way. They're all fantastic. I thought about keeping Braden Point and Steven Stamkos, but I just want to see what Matt Barzal could do with that guy on the third line. So yeah, my fourth line, to reiterate, is O'Reilly, Point, and Stone. I think they're great at both ends of the ice. I think if Braden Point is struggling on faceoffs, Ryan O'Reilly can just jump in and take them, and you could shift Point over. I don't think he'd have much of an issue. I think they're the right choice there. Who do you got?
I got Marner, Barzal, and Stone on this. When you, like I say, interchangeable, looking at those across O'Reilly, Point, Stammer, Barzal, Stone, and Marner, those could be switched. But I think Marner and Barzal on a team with the completely defensively responsible and just perfect hockey player in Stone, there could be some excitement. And I think those guys could really be dangerous. And if Barzal is still in New York, you're looking at a guy that can play with you and give you that little bit of jump. So Marner could really be impact. I think they could be very good together. So my two extras are, I'm going to go with Mark Scheifele as one of them. And I was down to the similar names on the last two, but Couturier and Couture, and I ended up going with Logan Couture on this one. We've talked in the past about I really, really like him, and I think that, you know, kind of coming back from injuries and excelling through this year and into the next year. So I think if he does that, he deserves a spot. And I think he could be a guy that you have in the World Junior teams where you're the last forward to make it, and then you end up creeping yourself in and do something impactful. I just see the way his career has been so far, and he's been great, but he's never actually got the recognition he maybe deserves. This might be his chance.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're doing a team like this, there's guys who are going to be left out that are just stars, right? Like neither of us have mentioned John Tavares on our team. Like that's pretty amazing. That shows the strength of the country and the depth we have. My extras, I have Mark Scheifele there as well. I like having extras that are centers. My other extra is Sean Couturier. I won the Selke last year. I wanted to have another left-handed shot just in case that a left wing goes down or I can move him up in the lineup. I just think that those two guys are good at both ends of the ice, and you can plug them in a top six, bottom six. I like those as my extras. I wanted to talk to you about, I don't know if you saw Craig Button's list from TSN. He's an analyst. He put out his list. He had some, I don't know if he realized that the Olympics would be next season, like you were saying, because he had some iffy choices for me.
Very, very questionable picks. Very optimistic picks. Let's say that.
Yeah, for me on D, he had Colton Parayko, which I think Parayko is a great D, but I see guys like if we're looking at the right side, and we already mentioned that we have Hamilton, Pietrangelo, Makar, Doughty, Weber, all as right-handed shots that should be in that conversation. Every single one of those guys is above Parayko for me. And then the other side, he had Bowen Byram making the team. I don't know if he's watched Bowen Byram in the NHL yet. He's great. He's a fantastic player, and I think he's going to be an amazing NHLer. But he also looks like he's a rookie, and he is not physically there yet. And to say that he would be one of the top 8 in Canada next season is a little mind-boggling to me.
Well, I read up the article on him explaining some of the things, and he talked about Doughty at the time in the 2010 Olympics, right? Making being on that team as a very, very young, and everyone being so surprised. And he was just, I guess he was just trying to compare that and contrast to that. So I don't love it. I mean, I think you never know, right? Who knows? Maybe he does. And in spurts, he's looked fantastic. But like you said, he's right now, if I'm picking top defenseman in the league, a Canadian-born top defenseman, he's not on the list. If my guys, the guys I picked are definitely above him. Guys, Morgan Riley, even guys like Brent Burns and Drew Doughty are probably above him on that list right now. It's an age thing. You're playing the Olympics it's as much of a man's game as it gets. So I think if he's looking young now, he's going to have to adapt very big over the year to make the team.
Yeah, well, my question for you is that I thought he looked fantastic in the World Juniors, but if you take any of those other guys and you put them in the World Juniors, it would have been ridiculous. And that's because obviously they're men and they're NHL superstars, but like it shows that he's still a teenager right now. And there's nothing, teenagers have been able to play on the team. Like you said, Doughty was able to do it. I don't think he's there yet. And that's my opinion on it. I think on forwards, he had Bo Horvat on his third line. I think Bo Horvat can play a two-way game. I could see him, somehow slot in on the team. I just think there's better players available. That's why I had him left out. But like I had Couturier there, Horvat plays the game the right way. He'll grind, he'll muck and grind, and I could see him slotting on the team. I wouldn't be surprised at it.
No, and that's when we talk about with the bottom. I'd say there's about four pieces you can move around and you can interchange those parts. Like you say, both of our lists have no Tavares. They make it a whole lot more difficult if Taves was healthy right now, because there's another name that you never know what's gonna like. So him being out right now, it's much easier. But it's Horvat for me. He's your Couturier. He the leadership role is great, and you know what you're getting out of him, right? He's not very streaky. It's very mature and reliable, I would say. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think. I'm happy with my picks. Might have to move a line or two around by give me a year before that, but for right now, I like where we're sitting.
Yeah, sounds good. And so before we finish up today, we got to hit our segment. We got to hit our props and drops. Who do you got this week? Who stood out as good and who stood out as bad?
Yeah, so back to the props and drops. If we didn't talk about McDavid and Draisaitl at the start, it would have been very, very tough not to put one of them out there. I'm gonna leave them. I wasn't gonna talk about it. I'm gonna leave them all for one reason, and not that I expect them to be at 2 points a game. This is a whole expectations thing, but if they're not doing what they're doing, then like they have to be doing what they're doing, I guess. So they do deserve an honorable mention, and it's fantastic what they're doing. But I'm gonna give it to a guy a little more surprising. I'm gonna give it to a Hab for the first time. We talked to Habs a lot here, but I'm gonna give it to Jeff Petrie. Since he's came to Montreal, I've really, really liked him. I think he's been great. And he's never had to be the guy, right? So he's always kind of just got to quietly go about his business and do his thing. Guys now, like he's leading defenseman in points, or he's tied with Makar in points right now, but he's been just very, very effective, playing great hockey, a big reason why they're winning games. And guys are obviously, I don't think it's going to stay. I think Cale Makar might have the Norris. He's kind of running away with it right now, very early in the season. But the last rankings I saw had Petrie at 2, right, in the Norris ranking. So if I were to tell you that 10 games into the season, Jeff Petrie would be leading the league defenseman in points and number 2 in the Norris rankings, you'd just laugh. You'd laugh me out of the room. So if we're looking at expectations, he's been above and beyond the Call of Duty.
Yeah, well, it's pretty easy to always laugh at the Habs fan in the room. So, yeah, I would, of course, laughed you out. But, no, that's a great pick. Jeff Petrie, like you said, like, for me, I've always looked at him and I've seen Shea Weber. And like you said, he's never been the number one guy in that team for me. Like, I would always look at Weber and be like, yeah, he's the stud back there. He's doing everything. And this year I've gotten the chance to watch Petrie more and more. And I'm like, this guy's fantastic. This guy's amazing. He's all world right now. So, I hope he gets some love for the Norris. I hope he is able to keep it up, and I hope he, finishes in a couple of contention and, be right in there. But I hope Makar wins it, considering that he was my pick. So let's hope for that. My prop for the week is David Pastrnak. So David Pastrnak, he misses the start of the season. He missed months because he had shoulder surgery. So he's out. And he jumps back in late. Everybody else got their legs underneath him, got going. And I was sitting there, I was like, man, this guy, I feel bad for him. He almost won the Rocket Richard last year. He's not even going to be in the running this year because just joining late, it's really tough. And he goes in his first 3 games, and 2 of them are against the Philadelphia Flyers. So I would consider a pretty solid team. And he ends up with 5 goals and 2 assists for 7 points in his first 3 games last week. And for me, 5 goals, he's not out of the race of the Rocket Richard anymore. Yeah, he's not at the top, obviously. He's only played 3 games. But I think that being able to, it takes a truly special player to miss that much time and to jump back in and get a 2-goal game and then a hat trick. Like, this guy is one of the best scorers in the game. He's my prop.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not going to get any complaints out of me. I came in last week and said the Boston Bruins have really turned things around without him in the lineup. He comes into the lineup, the rest of the team stops scoring and just lets him carry the load for a little bit. So no, I like that a lot. Who are you gonna throw some shade to this week with your drop?
Well, I feel like I could throw it to the entire Ottawa Senators organization, but I chose one guy in specific. I chose Matt Murray. I will say the only thing, I'm going to defend him first before I tear him apart. So I'm going to defend him by saying that he has one NHL defenseman in front of him, and that's Thomas Chabot, and then Thomas Chabot got hurt. So he has an AHL squad in front of him. There's my defense, and here's my tearing apart. They outshot the Vancouver Canucks the other night and lost 4-1. He is letting in goals from everywhere. He looks like he does not want to stop the puck. I got his save percentage, his goals against average for the year. His save percentage for this season so far is .849, and his goals against average is .482. So 4 goals, 4.82 goals per game against this guy right now. And his last 3 starts since our last podcast have been 800 save percentage, an 840, and then a 667. And that's one where he, I think, let in 3 goals on 9 shots and got pulled. And that was versus the Oilers. So there's not much just to say other than that contract looks really rough right now. And I do feel bad for the guy not having anything in front of him, but the same time, you went there, you got paid, and regardless who's in front of you, you're supposed to stop some pucks, and he's not.
Yeah, plain and simple. A lot of people kind of he was a big part with them when some confusion in the off season, them going through huge rebuilds, he potentially solidifying himself with his time in Pittsburgh as a very star goaltender in this league, something to build on a career. And people questioned Ottawa picking him up. The way he's playing right now, he fits that program perfectly. So maybe they know what they're doing there. They just knew that he was going to start letting in goals and push them towards the number 1 pick. Who knows? I like the drop though. Throughout this week, I'm trying to find someone that I really didn't like, and I couldn't. It was hard. I'm just so happy right now. So, but one guy I'm going to go with is Matt Duchene from the Nashville Predators, and I don't hold him to a very, very high expectation, I wouldn't say, but even on the small expectation that I hold him to, it's more than what does he have right now? 3 points in 9 games, 10 games, -3, playing like he's not really shooting the puck that much, not creating opportunities. This is a team that you talk about looking weird, putting Columbus in the playoffs. I picked them to make the playoffs, and that's on the back of guys like this, right? So he's not doing it for you. If you really want that, like if you want Nashville to really plummet and just get rid of those past like years of success, him playing like this and guys alongside him playing like this, it's going to put it in the fast track. So if they want to have any kind of success as an older guy and an offensive guy, even though his career is on the downhill, he needs to find ways to produce offense. So for me, it's just not there right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that he's a guy that I know he played in the Canadian market in Ottawa, and he was built up to be a first line center. I think he's a career second line guy. I think he's a second line center is what he is, but you want your second line center to have more than 3 points in 9 or 10 games. Like you need to expect that out of him. And he doesn't play the best away from the puck. So if he's not producing offense, it's what have you done for me? So yeah, I'm completely with you. It's crazy to think that he's only in his second year of an 8-year, $8 million a year contract. That's pretty scary. If he's producing like this now, like what's it going to be by the end? It's really tough. But yeah, me roasting on him that he's a second line center, but he needs to be better. Like he just flat out, they don't score there, and they brought him in to be a scoring center, and he was looked uninspired and he's not scoring. So I can't argue with your pick at all. Like I chose Murray, and Murray's been terrible, but Duchene's been terrible too. So I'm completely with you.
Yeah. And that really surprised me when you just said that he's having his second year of that deal. I forgot all about that. And that is, I mean, I was just saying about how his career is on a downhill slide. So that you better hope not if you're Nashville Predators GM. But at the end of the day, that's another week of hockey in the books, another week on the podcast. So we'll thanks for listening. If you leave some comments in the comment section with any questions, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.